While cleaning my room, I was listening to some tech mode videos in the background. I don't know if that's what caused this, or if it was fate or whatever, but I happened to stumble across this piece of technology inside of this box while reorganizing my bookshelf. Now this was some cinematic shit, as I had just discovered a childhood memory. After taking it out and looking it over, I started thinking about how digital handheld cameras seem to be on the rise again, which is honestly a great thing that I'm all here for. I loved using this thing as a kid. I loved taking it on field trips and school sleepaway camps and vacations. You know, before I actually was allowed to have a cell phone, this was my primary way of taking, well, not exactly. We can't go over my pre-cell phone camera days without discussing this Fujifilm, but that will be a different video. I decided to take this camera on my trip to Oahu. I figured now that I had a bit more photography experience, I could actually try my hand at some photos, but take them with a bit more intention. Before we go over those photos though, I wanted to give a quick info laydown on this camera. If you want to skip to the photos, I understand not everyone wants to know all the nerdy ass details, go to this timestamp here.
This is a Canon Powershot s95. It was released in 2010. Now, I remember my dad was a pretty big fan of these cameras. We also had an S90 as well as an S120. I remember seeing it for the first time and being amazed at how much more advanced it looked compared to the daily driver cameras I used to take around. Like this Fujifilm here. This is a Fujifilm A235. Now, I loved this camera, but I wanted this camera, considering that like this just looks so much more souped up and advanced, and it had a lot more features compared to this pretty simple camera. I loved this camera, don't get me wrong, but this one really caught my eye when I was first introduced to it. So you can imagine how excited I was when I was finally allowed to borrow it for pictures and videos for, you know, school field trips and that kind of thing, but as long as I used it very responsibly and carefully.
The S95 originally retailed for $400, however, nowadays on eBay they go from around as low as $99 to $278. eBay has a lot of options that give you choices of how much stuff you want to buy, which makes the price vary.
The S95 sets itself apart from digicams like this Fujifilm A235, which will get its own video, as this thing is an entirely different beast with a whole other different story behind it. The S95 is a compact camera of similar size to the Fujifilm. You can see the comparison here. Yeah, you get the point. Anyways, compact camera, similar size to the Fujifilm, but its end goal is not just to be a point-and-shoot camera, but to essentially try its best to be a compact, pocket-sized DSLR. It's got a 10 megapixel count, which seems low, but that's for a specific reason. The S95 has a much larger image sensor than its more compact counterparts that came before. This combination allows for more significantly crisper images that still retain that slight noise that makes point-and-shoot photos so unique. Additionally, the stabilization technology in the camera was beefed up, significantly countering camera shake effects, as well as a variety of modes that we'll discuss in a second. A 2010 photography blog post referred to it as a pimped-out point-and-shoot, and I can't think of a better way of describing this camera.
In Pokemon terms, it's like the camera that evolves into a DSLR.
Now, taking a look at this camera, it's held up pretty well for about a decade and a half, unlike my newer and more futuristic camera like the DJI Pocket 2. I've never felt worried carrying this thing in my pocket or a backpack once. Everything on this camera feels very sturdy. It's got a good heft to it, and it makes it feel like I don't have to worry about it possibly breaking on me if I just breathe on it. The only thing that's a little bit messed up is the wrist strap. You can see here, I mean, this is the original stock one, and even then I think it's still held together pretty well, all things considered. It's just a little frayed. Now, if we take a look at the lens here, we can see that it's a 3.8 by 15 Canon zoom lens. This little dial here aids in that feature, which we will look at more once I actually turn this thing on. On the bottom, this is where you access the batteries. You flip it open like that, and you'll see this is the battery here. You pop this tab and it just springs right out. Now, unlike the Fujifilm, which takes these AA batteries, the S95 takes these, let's see if we can focus here, NB6L brick batteries. I actually have the charger for them. Okay, here we go. I had to actually go get it, but I have the charger for the batteries right here. So what you do, if you want to charge it, you flip this out. You can either plug the battery in first or plug it into the wall first, doesn't really matter. You just plug it in and then recharge the batteries. Now these are the OG Canon batteries, which I can't find on Amazon, but thankfully there's still plenty of relatively well-priced options from the third-party sources if you happen to need more. For the memory, it uses an SD card. Ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, this is the only place your pictures will be stored. They will not be uploaded onto some privatized cloud server or confined inside of a cell phone. They will actually be in a tangible piece of plastic and metal that you have complete autonomy over. We cannot let physical media die.
Aren't you tired of lugging around all that junk? You don't even need those pesky files anymore. You own nothing, you own nothing, you own nothing, you own nothing.
I don't know what came over me there. There we go. I saw how fingerprinty and nasty the monitor was, so I took this microfiber towel and I wiped it down. So anyways, let's actually turn this thing on now. It reminds you for a split second what camera you're using before it shows you the actual display picture. Now, if you can see that I have the camera grid turned on, but you can toggle that on and off with the display button right here. Try to get it the way that it shows. There we go. So on the top you can see this dial that has all of the various functions. I currently have it set to auto, and spoiler alert, that's primarily the mode that I use to shoot pictures with. Auto mode basically sets up everything for you depending on your lighting. I mainly use that for when I went to Hawaii because honestly I just wanted to use it like a point and shoot camera. I would love to use this and take advantage of all of the customization and mess with all these different features, but honestly auto mode has been pretty good so far and pretty effective. We're going to go on this dial here and switch it over to program mode because there actually is something I wanted to show for that. That was the only other mode that I used when I was in Oahu. The program mode basically allows me to adjust the exposure value with this dial on the side here. You can turn the exposure all the way up or make it very low, like that. I mainly use that because it helped me take clearer pictures in a sunny environment without the picture being completely flooded with light. I mean, you know, it's a tropical island, there's a lot of sunlight, so turning the exposure down a bit to just kind of get the natural sunlight to, you know, kind of brighten up everything. Very handy feature for this camera. I'm going to be honest, you might want to go into program mode and lower the exposure a bit if you plan on taking pictures somewhere other than Washington, more specifically Western Washington, where getting an ounce of sunlight is considered a luxury. Additionally, you can put a camera filter on the lens, which I'm currently looking into, but for now, here's a picture I took through some sunglasses. In addition, if you click this function settings, you get all of these different features and settings that pretty much give you all kinds of color schemes and shutter speeds, and just you get to really customize your shot. The flash button is on the side here. It's controlled by this dial, so if we pop it up, you can see that the flash pops out of the top here. I always thought this camera reminded me of R2-D2 with the little lens and the periscope that pops up. You got a few flash modes. You've got auto, which basically fires it when there's, the lighting is low. There's on, which just leaves it on. And then there's slow synchro, which basically slows the shutter speed and then, just takes the flash. Here are some picture examples of each one. We're going to just turn the flash off here. So, in addition to this wheel with flash, there is the timer button. You can actually set the length of the timer. There's your macro button here with the different settings. I'm just going to do that. And then this menu button down here takes you to the actual camera settings and options. You just click the focus button to go back. Now, another mode that it has is video mode. It's alright. I mean, it's pretty bare bones, but it gets the job done. You can see here, this is my actual filming camera that I'm using to make the majority of this video. It's my Osmo. We got the microphone over here as well.
Night mode also deserves a shout out. It can take some very nice pictures. The catch is that you will need some sort of stabilizer or else the images will blur really badly, like you can see here. I actually use my DJI tripod and it works just fine. The blur isn't always a bad thing though, and you can sometimes use it to your advantage for shots like this.
Finally, to zoom in on the camera, you either turn the wheel on the lens here, or you can use this lever located at the shutter button. I'm going to be honest, this thing has a lot of special customizing and features and all kinds of different things that you can mess around with, and I haven't even gotten into that. By the time I was allowed to use this camera in middle school, phone cameras were starting to overtake handheld cameras in terms of portable photos. The only time I ever really took this was on school trips and sleepaway camps where I explicitly wasn't allowed to have a phone. If you guys want a more in-depth review of all of the customizing options, I recommend that you watch InfoSync's video on the camera. He goes into a lot more detail, and it was made around the time of the camera's actual release. And well, honestly, I'm sure a lot of you guys just want to see the pictures. I just figured I'd educate a little bit on some physical media. After all, you don't need to worry about photos being stored on a cloud run by a corporation. Anyway, rant over. Here are the pictures.